You've heard of heroic labs by now, and we keep talking about them because in today's mature market, you need every edge to be successful. Rather than spending those precious company dollars on building game tech, focus on building your game and shipping it. Get into your players' hands faster and grow your community. Heroic Labs is battle-tested partner and friend of the podcast. Their tech enables you to be flexible, creative, and scale for success. Heroic Labs has your tech stack covered. Whether you're looking for a world-class back-end game server, an amazing game development framework, fantastic live ops tooling, or reliable mass scalability, Heroic Labs has solutions for all of these challenges. And it's not just us at Deconstructor of Fun praising Heroic Labs. The company works with some of the world's biggest publishers on many of the beloved games. Focus on your game, save a big chunk of cheese, and avoid tech risks with Heroic Labs. Welcome everybody to the Deconstructor of Fun podcast. I got two legends over here. So let's start with you, Pete. Pete Hawley. You have a storied career with leadership positions at 100 Thieves, EA, Zynga, Lionhead, Criterion, Sony, Telltale, Mythical Games. You're a very passionate cyclist. I remember that. At least you were. I believe you still are.
Not as much as I used to when we worked together, but yes.
Yeah. You're a music aficionado. I believe you're still that.
Very much so.
And a motorsport enthusiast.
Yeah, here's Valentino Rossi watching over me during this podcast. Yeah.
Perfect. I got few tidbits right. You were founder of Red Robot Game. Was that the name of the
Red Robot Lab? Yeah, pioneers in location-based gaming. It's you've got to get startups right in terms of timing, and we were 3 years before Pokemon Go, so a little frustrating. Yeah,
a little bit too early. And that was your first startup, but it probably isn't your last one because currently you're in a little bit of a stealth mode, according to LinkedIn.
Yeah. Well, independent, and I think you used the word perhaps. So yeah, we're the team's independent. We left with the team and the software with 100 Thieves blessing, and really trying to figure out our future. And we've got some pretty interesting options. Yeah.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about the games you made at 100 Thieves because one of them or a couple of them were UEFN games, and then that's going to be interesting how you continue from there. So second guest, Alex Seropian, founder of Look North World and the host of fabulous Fourth Curtain podcast. Alex, welcome to the show. But welcome back to the show. You've been here. Both of you have been here before.
Yes, thank you. It's great to be back.
Yeah. And a little bit about Alex. So you were founder of Industrial Toys that was acquired by EA. You were making the Battlefield as well as the was it Morningstar?
Yes, that's
franchises?
Right. Yeah, very early FPS on mobile.
Perfect. And then you were a founder of Wideload Games that was acquired by Disney. And before that, you were a founder of Bungie that got acquired by Microsoft. So you were definitely been from startups to corporation, back to a startup to a corporation. So that seems to be your core loop is start, sell, start again.
I'm currently out in the wild exploring the world of entrepreneurship. Yes.
All right. That's so today we're going to talk about UEFN. Is it magic or is it something else? The magic. And both of you have been making UEFN games. So I think, Pete, that will be interesting to start with you because you started off by doing, I remember watching these videos with 100 Thieves. You're making a multiplayer shooter, and then you kind of pivoted towards UEFN because it was faster to get to the market. You get more reps, more experience. Is that correct assumption?
Yeah, 100%. It was GDC last year, so 2023. We had a small team of 6 or 7. Really interesting mix. There's some people in their early 20s who came from the Fortnite creative community, and then my lead environment artist joined us from Overwatch 1 and 2. So we had this really nice mix, extremely talented team. It's hard to get funding for a standalone game inside another company. And when we were at GDC, Epic announced UEFN, and once we'd figured out what the acronym meant, which was still confusing stuff, we went back to base and thought it was a really great idea for a number of reasons. One, the team's small, we could move very quickly, and it would test a number of theses that we had at 100 Thieves, that by working with the likes of, Courage and Valkyrie and the overall reach that the company has, around 150 million gamers worldwide, and this really awesome sort of authentic voice, that'd be quite an interesting way to, get to an audience and help discover the game. So it was such a fantastic way to prove that in weeks, not years. So that's our original reason to do it. And Yeah, we made Bankheist in like 8 weeks. So really fantastic way to test some thesis on game design, but also, well, can 100 Thieves launch content and people find it in interesting ways?
It's like prototyping, but the quality is production quality, and the prototype goes out in the market.
Yeah, and one of my engineers said, I think he summed it up perfectly. He said it's just a really safe place to fail. You know, it's like when we were at Zynga, you know, we'd often celebrate failure because it's quite frequent. And so, obviously, with a team of 6 and you take 8 weeks, you know, it's okay to fail if you know your game comes out and it pops and it drops in 48 hours. We were very lucky it didn't do that. And our second game that we were launched at December, that also did really well for us. So we've been pretty lucky, but especially because it was the first one we did. But it could, like many others, I think 92% of islands are completely empty. They don't have any people in them. So it's pretty fraught with risk.
But you had so 100 Thieves esports organization, gigantic reach. So you had that audience you can promote these islands to, and that probably helped a lot.
Yeah, I think looking back, because you know, there's not much data on the dashboard, and Alex can attest to that too. So you have to draw some assumptions. So you look on your dashboard, you can see how many hours are spent, time spent, and so on, and that was very, very high for us. You can also look at Fortnite.gg, which is a third-party data site, and you can start to do some interesting correlations about how and where and why you were discovered. So I think what happened with 100 Thieves is, you know, most islands do get a moment in the spotlight, and you'll be fed a number of users, let's say 200 to 400 players in Fortnite, and from that sort of initial cycle, I think the system, the data is looking for something sticky. It's looking for a flywheel that it can then start to promote because engagement is higher, or you know, the players love it and play it longer than maybe many others. And I think from those initial flywheels, you start to see yourself being populated across different discovery channels, much like it was back on, you know, Android and iOS in the early days around 2011. You know, everyone was fighting for the top left tile. So it's quite similar to that, really.
Interesting. And you're still working on those titles or new titles?
Yeah, we keep them fresh, you know, because sometimes they'll change policy. You've got to keep it updated. It's a bit like working the web, really. With you know, you can populate and push code pretty much every single day. It's very simple. We've changed round structures. We've added new game modes and stuff. And when new features come along, we jump back in and, you know, clean it up, polish it up, keep it live, keep it fresh. And every now and again, you know, you'll get a refeature. And, you know, even like last week, I think Bank Heist was running at, you know, 5,000 DAU, which after a year is like, we don't touch it. You know, it just sits there and just spins along in these discovery channels every now and again. So, yeah, that one set us up nicely, actually. And because the art stood out, because it was all custom built, I think that's attracted a lot of new interest from others, IP holders and so on. So
interesting. All right, Alex, you had a different start to UEFN journey. So you did not have 100 Thieves behind you. You were coming in from a couple of big shooters, but how did you end up going for UEFN and not kind of a more, I don't know, custom or however you want to put it, like a traditional game development?
Yeah, maybe similarly to you, Pete. Last year at GDC, we got the same explanation of the acronym, and we had just me and like my core team at EA were just, I guess I would say we were liberated from the corporate environment, and we were kind of looking for what we wanted to do next. And it was right when UEFN came out. And similarly to UP, we looked at it and was like, wow, this is just a great tool set that we know, a pipeline that's like, I agree. It's a great place to fail because you can go so fast with, 200 plus million players a month already there. Initially, I looked at this as a place where we could go from having come off a multi-year project that didn't even come out to an environment where we could be releasing games very quickly. And that just scratched a creative itch for me, a productive builder. I want to make things and put them out in the world. And it's been true. I mean, we've been going we just had our 1-year anniversary for the company last week. We just released our 5th game. We've got a slate of 13 games in production. So just in terms of the throughput and productivity, and we're not just building a developer, we're building a publisher, so we're publishing other people's games as well. The ability to learn is just it's so amplified here. It's like a petri dish, where you in the past in AAA you would spend 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years getting to a point where you can release a game and really start to build a flywheel on one product. And here you can do that in a month or two. And every time you do that, you repeat and you learn stuff. And it is super early. So all those things that Pete was talking about, like the discovery algorithm that drives the storefront and drives discoverability of your games is still very basic. It's kind of one size fits all. So some games that are, appealing to a wide swath of players that are on Fortnite right now, which means close to the Fortnite play paradigm, have a little bit of an advantage, and those that came up during the original creative days of Fortnite also have an advantage. But as the tool set gets, this is why I'm excited about it as a platform. As the tool set gets more interesting and as the platform gets more sophisticated in terms of personalized discovery, all the kinds of features like attribution, which we take for granted on any other platform, as all those things become a reality, it becomes a way more interesting platform to publish on. And then if you kind of back up high level why I'm doing this, why I think it's an interesting business to build, you look at where Epic is going with the technology and how UEFN is merging with Unreal 6 and the Epic Store, and all of these deals like Disney coming in, putting a lot of money in, Sony put a lot of money in, Lego put a lot of money in, and all of this is to create this interoperable ecosystem. Theoretically, it sounds amazing on paper, and if you fast forward 3 years, it is the metaverse. I know we're not allowed to use that word anymore, but it's what it is. Will it actually come to pass? I don't know, but I think we're in a moment where it feels to me, and this is my this is my pitch, right? It feels to me like this is as significant as a change in how games are made and played and distributed as mobile was. When the App Store came out, we had no idea it was going to be as big as it is today. And the thing that's really interesting to me is, like, in that first year, I think Epic paid out about as much as Apple did in year one of having the store. It was hundreds of millions of dollars paid out to developers. So yeah, that's a little bit about what we're doing, but that's more so, I guess, why we're doing it.
Yeah, the convergence thing's an interesting one. And I guess like iOS, the curve of expectation from the audience will also go up. And as we start to get new tools like MetaHuman and our own characters and our own camera systems, and suddenly it won't look or feel or play anything like Fortnite. And so that's going to be super interesting, especially if you've got a good mix on a team, like to Alex's point, good strong background in AAA, because the expectations go up, and we'll probably move away from Skibbity Toilet and have some pretty sort of sophisticated multiplayer shooters, for example, and our own interpretations of Battle Royale. So super exciting, that part.
I mean, even in the first year, it's like you just look at the roadmap that they've delivered on. It might not be exactly 100% of what we exactly want, but it's a lot of stuff. I mean, the ability to... It's funny because some of the things are like so table stakes, like the ability to save players' progress and to change the camera.
When they announced the persistence thing, I was like, in 1989 we used to call that a save game.
Yes,
but it's wild. There's the assumptions you make, having worked at the likes of Zynga about attribution or otherwise, or discovery. We did the keynote in New Orleans last year, and obviously, as Alex was saying, we've all dabbled in corporate life at various points in our careers, but you soon remember when you go back to do a keynote that for a 10-minute talk you have to do 24 hours of rehearsal. So I was thinking I could have made half a game in this time, but during that time in the green room, it was great. You ask questions of Tim Sweeney said to me, "Is the one thing you want? What would you like?" And I said, "Just give me deep linking. I have 160 million gamers, and I've got these channels. I've got TikTok, we've got Twitter, we've got X. We've got so many players that we could drive." And I think they've been very thoughtful about how they roll these things out. So it's not just one size fits all for everybody. You just got to sit out this year. I would suggest anyone who's going to come into UEFN with all the good creative and business intentions that we do, you're going to need a runway and a great deal of patience, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. Entirely true. There's a lot of learning to be done. Like on any platform, it's like for us just watching how players interact and what sort of the preferences are like and what play patterns work, mechanics work and bounce. It's like as much of a learning for me on this platform as it was, mobile and free to play.
Safe place to fail thing, going back to Bank Heist, it was, two teams, attackers, defenders, 3 points, very objective, very competitive, down the streets, inside, close quarters combat. That could have been a complete and total failure to the Fortnite audience who were used to something pretty much entirely different from that. And that was another reason to get it done quickly, because it could have just done a 24-hour pop and drop, which is very common, but actually it turns out it has 6 to 7x the engagement time spent in an average island, which I think is about 7 minutes last count.
I got a couple of questions. So, as you said, like a lot of the basic things are missing because you guys went, head first on the frontier, just on a totally new platform. So, my question there is like, what is the communication like with Epic? Like, other than talking to Tim Sweeney in Green Room, what is how do they communicate about their roadmaps? Are they very responsive? Is it like relationship with Google or is it relationship with Apple?
It's definitely different than the relationship with Apple. Apple is famously very secretive about anything, and you don't usually learn about it until the developer learns at the same pace as the customer. And I think Epic is banking a lot of the future of their company on this being successful. It's a core part of their strategy, and they've been very open, not just with us, professional developers or whatever. They've been very open with the community about where the roadmap is headed and providing updates on when those things will be fulfilled. They do invest in a lot of education for folks that are building on the platform. I think there's last I looked, there was 10 or 12,000 people building on this platform. And yes, a lot of them are individuals, and a lot of them are in that 92% that have no players currently active in the islands. But that is just a lot of activity happening. They do have a developer relations team. So they do have people that are whose job it is to help make folks that are building on a platform successful. And they do listen. A lot of the things that they've asked, hey, what do you want? It's like deep linking it's on there. They're trying to figure that out. It's like some of the other stuff that's been asked where they have delivered against. So I would say, I don't know how to compare it to Google, but it's definitely very different from Apple. And I think that's intentional in many ways. I don't know, Pete, what's your experience been?
Yeah, very similar. That, very, very supportive, great communicators, whether it be developer success or the exec team, some really good back and forth. We ran into some really crazy challenges just 2 weeks ago. I think somebody was on the moderation side, someone in the community just had it in for us. And they just kept sort of complaining about the image that we use as our main art tile for Bank Heist, that it was misleading. And I think this bad operator was hitting us on the community like 6 times, and the game it was just being delisted. It's like every other day Bank Heist got delisted. I'm like, what? Why are we getting banned? We've been live since July last year, same image, same product, nothing's changed. And then one bad actor in the community decides to just start hitting us and complaining us. And the system is quite automated, turns out. And so if people start to complain about the imagery you're using, whether it's true or not, we got delisted 5 times. I was like, come on. I'm trying to run a studio here of 6 people, and, okay, 5 to 10,000 DAU ain't much, but, all of these things help. So anyway, they were fantastic at resolving that problem. We almost had our publishing rights removed. So that's just one example that if things get, heated in communities where, because obviously if you go and search for Bank Heist, there's like 5 of them. Like the people just copy paste ideas fairly consistently. So yeah, that was tough, but they were fantastic during that period. Even on just the developer relations level, never mind, the longer term roadmap and strategy and the convergence with Unreal 6. All of that's fascinating. Mm-hmm. But yeah, even on the day-to-day, they've been really good. I just wish we had more data. It drives me nuts.
Yeah. Or ability to basically continue where you stopped. This podcast is brought to you by Data AI. Now, you're asking, didn't they get acquired by Sensor Tower? They did, and that's awesome. Here's why. Whether you loved using Data.ai or Sensor Tower, the combined company will offer customers even stronger and more detailed insights on the full digital customer journey. Exciting times lie ahead as Sensor Tower and Data AI join forces. Go to data.ai or sensortower.com and get on board with undeniably the best data partner in the business. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah, Alex and I talked about this before. You've just got to celebrate those shortcomings, really. We had this joke when we first started building that Fortnite says no. It was kind of up on the wall. It's like every time you tried to do something that we, to Alex's point, you may take for granted, it was like, no, can't do that. What about, no. My engineer came in, I was like, what about, can we do, no. What about the, no, can't do it. What, no. I'm just like, geez, like Fortnite says no again. I'm not even going to bother asking, but we just kept pushing. My favorite story was on Fortnite says no, was one of our engineers. I said, can we give me a soccer prototype? I'd just be really interested if we could build, some kind of 5-a-side soccer game in UEFN. That'd be fun. It's like the biggest sport in the world. See what that's like. Anyway, it turns out ball physics and physics generally, again, coming on the roadmap this year, but just not very good at this time for that sort of interaction. But one of our engineers went away after this very frustrating prototype playtime, and he sent a video later in the afternoon, and it had this amazing soccer experience. I was like, what happened? So he went off into the community on Discord. Turns out the chicken has really good physics because players kick it around. So we put a chicken inside a ball. Well, you can hack your way to great ideas. You've just got to celebrate it. Really.
That is so true. It's like the engineers in our team have all been programming games for decades. So it's like they've kind of gotten used to being having a clear path to being able to implement whatever feature a designer would come up with. But you really got to retrain yourself that modder's mindset of like, okay, there may be a right way, an quote unquote right way, or an optimal way to do this, but there's probably some tricky way to do this. You have to give yourself permission to think that way.
Has any of the team actually? You don't have to answer this question. Have any of them given up? Have you had any people just be like, you know what, I'm a C++. I just can't do this. Have you had any people just think, oh, I'm done with this, I can't do it? Because I have.
Not yet. No.
Yeah. So another question that I have about this is really the ROI part, because both of your studios are really small. Pete, you said you were 6, and Alex, you're probably like 4 or 5, right?
We're about 10.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you're really like a big UEFN studio. But anyways, like everybody's between 5 to 10. Let's put it that way. That's not a gigantic team. We're not talking about a crazy burn. So what is the ROI like here? Because you were saying that Epic is giving away almost as much as Apple was giving away during the first years. Is it profitable to run one of these small studios and you're kind of waiting for the tide to rise, but while you're waiting, you're already profitable? Or how does it work?
It absolutely can be. The unit economics are actually very favorable if you compare it to other platforms. The cost to build an island is low. The return on a successful island, top 100, can be high enough that a successful game on this platform can be operated at about a 90% ROI, which is bonkers. You compare that. You have to keep in mind also there's zero server costs. There's very low operating costs on an island that's successful. And the acquisition costs are also, they're very low because Fortnite itself is very targetable. So, you can't target your own game when you market a mobile game, but you can target Fortnite when you go out to market and acquire users for a Fortnite island. If we had deep linking, it'd be even lower. But as it is right now, our CPIs are under 30 cents, which for your listeners who are used to marketing on mobile, they probably just fell out of their chair because that's bonkers great. That said, it is definitely a power law here. So you have to be able to get yourself into that position in the top 100, which is it's hard to do right now just because the tastes are fairly narrow, the tools are fairly young, and the mechanics that we have at our fingertips for acquiring and retaining an audience, like the kind of data we get back, no attribution, no deep links, all that, it's just very leaky. So the answer is the ROI is great if you are successful. Finding success on an island by island basis is still fairly challenging. I don't know how you feel about that answer, Pete. I know we've talked about this before.
Yeah, I mean, I would say on an individual basis, Bankhouse was profitable. If you look at how long it took to make, the size of the team, and give you some context. So it had an average play time of about 40 minutes. And that's an average. So I'd imagine the upper limit of an island is 4 hours. You can't play any longer than 4 hours. That's a server limit that's put in place. So I think our top 10% of players were playing for many hours. We'll just assume that's the case. It's hard to find the actual data other than average. It's had about 8 million players, 95 million minutes played. Peak CCU around 6,000. And so over that initial period between July and September, and we were operating something of a live service. So one example to Alex's point on community, we did a fairly traditional game design job and decided, it's best of 5 rounds, first to 3. Turns out, kids just drop in and out of islands so quickly. That was kind of a crazy idea. And when we just opened it up to infinite rounds, we're doing lots of interesting changes on the code, and had some problems with memory and stuff, blah, blah. But actually, so that, over that period between, June, July through September, it was pretty profitable for us as a small team of 6. It's certainly not paying the bills anymore. We're probably going to go back to it, actually, with some interesting new camera modes and stuff. We did something over holiday. We did a theme there that had some nice pickup. So as a studio, not profitable in the first year, but we're very small. We don't spend marketing dollars. We haven't raised money. So we're just being very thoughtful and careful, to be honest, at this point. But certainly at initial launch, Bankhouse was great. And we've got something really interesting coming up that is quite significant in its undertaking. So our new project with an IP holder is going to take us about 6-7 months. It's a pretty big deal. And that's going to take a huge amount of effort other than smaller individual islands that we've done before.
Kind of going back to this, like you had a lot of users and you're both facing a little bit of a challenge just to keep it profitable. To my understanding, that is not that much about the quality of games, but more the tools, the attribution, the ability to market, the basic things that are missing that are creating these challenges for ROI and for essentially keeping players. When talking about the challenges with UEFN today, what are some of those challenges you've encountered while developing? So, maybe Pete, you can continue since you've live operated or tried to live operate a game successfully. Like, why didn't that take off? Because you have a long history with free-to-play games. It's not that this is the first free-to-play title you're trying to operate.
Yeah, and world-class product management working alongside me too. As we would at Zynga, for example. I just, in the end, for the timing and for the feature set, it really was, joking aside, persistence. I mean, if I can't pick up and continue when I come back, well, what's retention in a world of no persistence? So that was the real reason, honestly. When we go back to Bankhouse, which we will be doing soon, now we have persistence. We're actually going to be introducing some more interesting things because it just keeps getting featured every now and again. So that's going to be interesting to see the impact that has. Certainly, the retention data it's not, again, Mythical, you and I were at Zynga. We know what great dashboards look like.
Yeah.
But on the UEFN side, we have a rolling day one retention. I'm like, I'm not sure I can do much with that. Yeah. And other frustrations, but really, you've just got to dive into the community. I think that's one of the questions you sent before we jumped on the podcast, right? Is that you've just got to get in and spend time with the community and listen and update based on that, really. And that's a really great leading indicator. And Fortnite.gg is super useful because you can track yourself as a publisher. But yeah, it was for us. It was because of the time in which we launched. And I think any of our new stuff, and certainly when we go back and update older games, it's going to be certainly more interesting in the near future for sure, especially with discovery and features that are really persistent, that work over very long periods of time with what I would describe as a fairly sophisticated metagame too, and highly deeply social gameplay. So I think what comes next is going to be more fascinating from a live services perspective, that's for sure.
Alex, how about the challenges that you've faced with development, especially, and I mean, you've had what you said 6 games that you've launched.
We've launched 5, though. Four of those are UEFN. One of those is with Overwolf in Arc. But I think what Pete's talking about, I would agree with, is that the tools that are at the developer's fingertips today, developer/publisher, are a kind of a subset of what you would need to support the business model that exists. It's an engagement-based business model, so we get paid based on usage, and it's actually a really smart thing that Epic did setting it up that way, I think, because it incentivized developers to make things that are engaging, and it's very much aligned with what makes Fortnite successful. The more minutes played, the more healthy the ecosystem is, so it's win-win for everybody. But, if you want to make something that's super engaging, you have to build things that, people want to play for a lot of time and come back to. So, yeah, persistence absolutely matters. I think one of the things that is sort of like the defining limiting factor on what we can create today is, people don't really talk about this so much, but there is a limit to the size of the content that we can create. And that limit is squishy. It's basically represented by a thermometer, which is not terribly deterministic. It's when you add things to your island, the thermometer goes up, but it's not exact science or math. So scoping, an experience that you want to build, and building something that has a lot of depth and the ability to retain an audience, it has some, it's just has some constraints. It's Fortnite says no in a lot of cases, like Pete was saying. So that's, from my POV, that's why as more and more features come about, the ability to connect islands together and span persistence across multiple islands will give us the ability to expand on experiences as well, that kind of thing. That's where I think the tool set and, on the publishing side, all of those things that we were talking about before that a modern game publishing platform has, like when those things start to come online, then the tool set will catch up with how the business model works. And I think we'll start to see more sophistication in terms of the experiences that are built and how publishers operate as well. That's the catch up, I think, that we're all investing in. At least that's the catch up that we're investing in.
Yeah, the other parallel here is Zynga on Facebook to some extent, and you probably hear smaller studios and companies pitching themselves as the Zynga of UEFN, and some people are doing that now. Actually, again, coming back to hacking the system, some of the islands that have fairly large audiences in terms of concurrency, they are actually creating some hacky portals that you can jump through to their other islands and experiences. And that's been interesting to watch. And again, that's something that Epic has supported. They're not trying to clamp down or stop people from doing that. In the same way, if you want to retain the audience that loves the games and the experiences that you make, then you should be able to retain them in fascinating and interesting ways. So I think we'll probably see more social hubs appearing too, whether that be, music spaces or otherwise, where players can just come hang out, form a lobby, and then sort of hub and spoke into other things, your other experiences. And when that happens, you're going to start to see these like mini sort of ecosystems of players that just love your content. And the games aren't quite sophisticated enough to do that right now, but I think in the near future, that's going to be fun too. The sort of non-sweaty Fortnite experiences are going to be interesting, because obviously they've had huge success with their sort of music stuff, and not just the big sort of Travis Scott concert, but even more recently with Festival and some of the music integrations. So that's going to be fun too, I think.
This podcast is brought to you by AppsFlyer. In today's digital world, understanding your app's journey from discovery to download is more than just insightful, it's essential. Enter AppsFlyer, the leader in mobile attribution and marketing analytics that allows you to measure the full potential of your marketing efforts, making every ad dollar work smarter. With AppsFlyer, that's your new reality. Dive deep into data-driven insights that reveal exactly where your users come from and how they interact with your app. AppsFlyer, where your app's potential meets performance. I'm not familiar with UEFN, so what is well, actually, let me use Roblox as an example. So when we had Voldix here on the podcast, the person Andrew Rose talked about an interesting thing where he talked about the history of the company and how they tried to make a lot of Roblox games, and they were not quite able to find success with the type of games that they were making, with the audience they were making it for, because it's a very different audience. And though they have professional game development experience, Andrew is from Zynga as well, they still couldn't quite find what would hit with the players. And then they ended up with this publishing model where they rather acquired some of these games that were successful for somewhat reason, and then applied product management to those titles, like building tutorials and looking at the funnels, etc. So what's your take on this? Like, is it easy? Because you have been developing games for, what, 30 years now? At least 30? Closing on 40, maybe sometime. Like, I don't know how early you
40.
started.
When you say 40, you're being rude now.
I don't know how early you started. Like, some people start when they're like 12. Like, oh yeah, I made my first...
There's a crossover point when you go from veteran to legendary. It's like a video game level.
Yeah.
No, I remember, actually, Roblox is a great example, because I remember some of my old friends worked there from Zynga, and I met up with them at GDC at their drink thing. And I was fascinated by the game Frontlines that came out. And so I met with that team just to hang out and talk about how the hell they pulled that off, because it was just visually, and from a gameplay perspective, and how you do kill cams with Lua script. I mean, performing miracles, really. And they said the same thing. I've been making video games half my life, and he's 22. And I'm like, yeah, so am I. slightly longer period of time. But yeah, they're quite inspirational. And Roblox is quite unique, very different. I've seen a lot of companies doing what you described, looking at like 1.5 to 2.5 times EBITDA and rolling them up into fairly successful businesses, because, kind of like Alex says, it's difficult being I don't really design Fortnite Islands. I help build the team, the strategy, looking for money, IP partnerships, whatever it may be. Me designing a game in UEFN would just be a really bad idea, because the target audience is anything between 12 and 22. I'm not that person. My kids play Fortnite, but I'm not that person. So it's. I think Alex said this earlier. You've got to put yourself in the shoes and the seat of the community, because that's really what Epic's looking for, right? Where are they spending their time and spending their engagement? And Roblox is even wilder, from that perspective. So for those of us who can build companies, run studios, companies, great cultures, hire great people, all of that's really, really important, and to be a good leader and all the things that we've learned over the years. But for the content itself, you've got to take a very, very different approach. Quite often, it's our vert engineers that came from the Fortnite creative communities. They're telling me like what they're working on and when it's coming. It's very, very different, and I prefer that, obviously, at this point.
Alex, same type of experience, or how would you see it, like in terms of like the creativity and what hits in the UEFN realm? Like,
I would say, like I was saying before, the tastes of this audience are different. As different from, say, mobile as mobile was from AAA, in my experience, and I think it is a combination of, it is a younger audience, but Fortnite in itself is, it's been around for 7 years. It was a cultural phenomenon, it still is, and it's kind of transcended the idea of being a game. It's kind of this will date me, but like I equate it to like the mall. Like when I was a kid, the social construct in which I related to my friends and the world was the mall. That's what we would go there, and there were experiences there to be had, and Fortnite and Roblox, I guess, to the same degree, I guess, have filled that role for kids growing up, and especially the last 4 or 5 years, whatever, post-pandemic, even more so, or during the pandemic, even more so. So there's there's so much in the way of vocabulary, of just design sensibility, of the shorthand for how people on that, the players in that ecosystem relate to each other, and a lot of that you see come to fruition in the kinds of creativity that we see on the platform. So yeah, for 100 million%, like, I'm not the right person, like Pete says, to necessarily be designing, although I am, because it's just too much fun. But one of the things I'm most excited about is part of what we're doing is partnering with individual creators who've been building on the platform and helping to plus up their work, offer them, our skills basically to work for them, and help them finish islands and publish them. And that, I think, is super exciting, because it's very much just straight out of the community. And it's in the native language, from a design sensibility.
Yeah, there's some similarities on content, ideas, memes. I mean, Bankhouse wasn't plucked from thin air. We could see the success of Kids Love Robbing Banks. I mean, virtually, obviously, on Roblox. Some of those games were like super sticky. So, we did our research on the audience before just plucking an idea out of the air. That's really important. But I think the thing to remember on the sort of day-to-day sort of building a business, running a studio, making software point of view, they're just so wildly different from each other as platforms. I mean, obviously Fortnite was an enormous success, and then became this battle royale game shortly after launch, and then was just brute forced into this live service engine. And for friends of mine who worked there, that was a really hard, difficult, but amazing time for the company, and see what it is today. But essentially, if you think about it, Fortnite is this absolutely enormous AAA game, and it's an enormous client. And I think that does put some restrictions on, obviously server costs are something we don't bear, but that means that our islands can only be up for 4 hours at a time. The memory limits that Alex mentioned, the thermometer, like, very difficult to manage those memory limits when you're working with AAA artists from Overwatch, right? Within half an hour, the thermometer's full. Do it all again. Just completely differently.
That's right. And it's interesting. It's like, should we kit bash this, or should we build it from scratch? And in some ways, the answer to that is: does the player want something original, or do they want you to make just put it together with the Legos you got? And we've gotten surprising answers to that question.
Yeah. Literally, the Legos you've got as well. So, Roblox wildly different. I mean, essentially, we've done some stuff on Roblox. And it's more. It feels to me more like an operating system. It's like this giant foundational operating system. So it feels, in a very, very simple way to describe these things. But Roblox feels like this OS that is this foundational thing that you push up with 77 million DAU, which is absurd. Whereas Fortnite, you're unraveling what is this enormous chest of AAA content of the last 7 years and reconstructing it in magical ways. But obviously the scripting languages that have some commonality, but for what they are and the development, there's some crossovers, but they're very different things to work in. And
I think a lot of that is related to the business model too. If you on Roblox, there's a lot of monetization is what, in basically in-app monetization is what drives the economy, and Fortnite's completely different. So it does, how that trickles into how you think about design is very different.
Maybe we'll have our ability to have our own stores in the UEFN at some point. Maybe our own skins. Where you start to build your own revenue business inside your experiences.
Right.
That'd be great.
Yep.
Step into the future of game monetization with Xsolla. Xsolla empowers developers and publishers to market, sell, connect, and optimize their games globally. From payment solution to a full suite of tools designed to grow your game's revenue while fostering a loyal player base. Xsolla is your game's gateway to worldwide success. With Xsolla, the world is your playground. Visit xsolla.com today and find all the solutions that will help you to power your games into success everywhere. So talking about monetization, like, how does the monetization work on UEFN? Oh, so you're okay. So it is like Apple Arcade. It's a black box. then somebody sends a message from Epic like, "Hey, great engagement. Here's $300."
Yeah, you get a check every 30 days at the end of the month. And it's like, it's like a birthday present, It's either got $50 in it or $75,000 in it. I just, you're never quite sure. So it's like opening a present.
It like the memory meter, it is not 100% deterministic, but you are given hints. And it's very much related to minutes played. It's very much related to CCU. So, you have an island that's got strong CCU and consistent CCU. That's a moneymaker.
Yeah, we interestingly had 2 games that are fairly close on CCU, right? So Bank Heist at 6,500, a game we released at Holiday with 6,000 CCUs. Completely different payouts because the engagement in terms of average time spent on the island was far higher in our game. And so if it's an average of 7 minutes and we were seeing 40 minutes on average, that paid out more than the other. So like Alex says, you've got CCU, you've got average time, you can manufacture and think through DAU, you can go back logarithmically and get the math. We've done the product management job on the revenue, but it's some pretty interesting, heavy individual lifting on a per island, per product, per team basis, because you just don't have the one dashboard or the one set of magical metrics that we use, especially at Zynga and free-to-play mobile companies, for example. It really is just correlations and learnings, actually, from the last year, and having to bring all of that together and create your own data points, really.
That's challenging. So you're making an upfront investment, though it's not big, and then it depends all on the engagement of the island that you release. But at the same time, marketing is almost impossible because there's no attribution, or user acquisition is impossible because there's no attribution. So essentially, unless you have a big community, driving users to those games is
I wouldn't say that acquisition is impossible. It is entirely possible. It's just hard to measure. So you can, and we have run lots of different activities that you look at, and you can, like Pete's saying, you can manually correlate what you're doing to what's happening in your various experiences, and you can make those correlations, and you can further invest in the things that seem to have positive impact. It's not measurable, and that's really it needs to be measurable in order for us to be able to deterministically build a successful long-term business around it. But you can certainly invest in acquisition, and you can see those correlations, and
I think if you're in a 25, 30, 40 cent an install, you could probably run some interesting programs that way. Because obviously, when Mishka and I were at Zynga, Game of War was in the market, and they were spending anything between $40, $60, and $120 an install. So, obviously, we do need to figure out your ROAS at that point, clearly, it goes without saying. But I think if it's at that lower cost, you can actually run some pretty interesting experimentations. And for us, obviously, what we could do, uniquely and to some extent, but I think more will be doing this in the future, we could watch. So at the point at which Courage, right, with his 3 million people who were watching him that day, we could see the impact that had on our CCU when he broadcast and played Bank Heist with some of his friends, right? And the same when Valkyrie played it, and both of them have their voice in the game, and we used some of that in the key art, and we obviously had this huge reach on Twitter, right? So that was an interesting one, because we could, Courage played from 11 to 1:30. That's pretty cool. It's a 2.5-hour window. We can now go back to Fortnite.gg, and you could see how it started to hit CCU, but also how it started to push over the following next sort of 2 to 3 days, how it started to populate across other Discovery channels. And then because of all of that pickup, it got an epic pick about a week to 10 days later. And that really is the, like back in the day, really hoping for a sort of game of the week, Apple feature moment on the App Store. So we could correlate that too, because obviously, I think it was your original question, is that obviously was part of our thesis. Can our creators with these enormous followings drive interest, installs, and gameplay for the content we build? So that was an interesting one. It paid off.
And how do you overall launch and market a game? now that you're releasing the new one, so without like Pete, you without the 100 Thieves behind you, or I don't know if they will be supporting it in the same way. And Alex, you've released four games to UEFN. Like how do you approach the launch? Do you still invest into marketing and without any attribution, just call it brand marketing and just put in like 10Ks, or what's the approach? So Alex, maybe start with you.
We've been developing a playbook, and really it's been, as we've been releasing these islands over the last year, a lot of experimentation around activating streams, managing our TikTok and our Discord. We've built some community engagement tools that run on our Discord, so that when we are streaming with content creators, we're able to bring some kind of like metagame features between those streams. So like people were saying, you can see a bump, but then stream's over. What happens, how can we, even before persistence, how can we bring those players who were playing with whoever they're following, whatever streamer they're following, how can we bring them along for a ride that lasts for more than 2 hours? So all of those things are kind of in our playbook, and we've been jettisoning things that don't seem to have a big impact and retesting new things and keeping the things that do have an impact in our playbook. So when we launch a new island now, we are investing tens of thousands of dollars. I know it's not a huge budget, but in this ecosystem, that's what we're investing to activate all the things that have worked for us in the past, and to throw new experiments into the mix to find more things that will work for us in the future. And over time, because these cycles are so fast, and we're able to do, we hope to release a dozen games in the next year. We'll have a lot of learning through doing that, and be able to get better and better with each release. So the next game that we have coming up will be coming out at the end of this month, and it will have the benefit of many launches in advance of it, and it will help us learn how to get better for the ones that come after.
Yeah, there's some irony there as well, given that obviously the likes of Vinny Hacker, who's one of the creators at 100 Thieves, I think he has 30 million plus followers on TikTok, and Epic were telling us that TikTok is this really big organic discovery channel for them. But then you're hit with the irony that the 12-digit island code thinks it's a credit card, so you can't do that. So you just like, God damn it. Every time you turn around, it's like, wow, Fortnite says no on TikTok. But it's a really big sort of organic discovery engine, TikTok, and you can go and just see what gets traction there from other creators, other island makers, and you can see what gets traction on TikTok and see that start to correlate and populate to CCU on, I wouldn't call them competitors' islands. I just, on other people's content. That's been interesting too, to track that. Like, what is happening in absence of data, in absence of being able to drive installs and through deep linking or otherwise. What are we seeing just organically? That, in the same way we'd look at organic lift from a featuring on the App Store, it's again very similar. Not specific data that you would have in a spreadsheet, but you can make some correlations that are super helpful to decide whether you want to do that again. Because, like, to Alex's point, you can't just pop and drop with a creator. You have to play consistently. The friction of, okay, well, there's 20,000 people watching Valkyrie and she played for an hour. Well, how many of those people are going to go load Fortnite? I don't know. Turns out there's quite a few, in the hundreds. So that got us from 300 players CCU up to 700, over 1,000 the following. And then you get into the sort of rediscovery channels for individual players who can play something that they've played before, and you start to see some pickup and some repeat play from that. So that's been interesting. But it was that initial spin, I think. And obviously, I learned 3 months later from Epic, that's not a criticism, but they said, hey, Bankhouse has 7 times the average engagement time of a normal line. I was like, oh, okay, well, that explains a lot. Because now I can see why the flywheel worked, right? I didn't know why the flywheel worked other than our creators and some other activities. That one, actually, in terms of eyeballs, time spent, is clearly the one that got us most of the discovery and a reasonable check.
Yeah, I'll add in that, one thing that this ecosystem has is I would say it's a huge advantage is that Fortnite is not just a platform, it is a game. And Epic is a first party, on this platform. So they're driving growth at the top line because they release Lego Fortnite at the end of the year, and it brings in all these players, and it keeps this ecosystem, it keeps players in this ecosystem. And because there are games here, the platform becomes targetable. So you can have a couple of streamers, but they're not equal. If you have a streamer that like plays Fortnite, that is a great way to target this platform, because anybody watching them they're at least interested in watching somebody play Fortnite, and they're likely play Fortnite too. So you get a much clearer correlation between that channel and the potential for viewers of that channel to be a customer, because Fortnite in itself is a game and it's targetable. You don't really get that benefit on an original game that doesn't have a built audience yet, or I would even argue Roblox is more of a challenge from that perspective as well. But it's a really nice thing to think about, making UEFN games and to try and figure out how to be smart about acquiring and activating players through streamers.
It's an interesting point now, because the way I would be thinking theoretically, again, and not much playing Fortnite nor UEFN islands, is that when you market one of these islands, you kind of market Fortnite as a whole. And then Fortnite has so many engagement hooks and that big audience that really plays Fortnite for the Fortnite and for the social community and for the seasons and for all the new things that happen. So I understand why the retention would be very limited, because even though you're advertising something that is really cool, very much a Fortnite game, they still come for it, and it's like an appetizer, and now they go back to the main course, which is the Fortnite. And so it's kind of it's on one hand, it's very fast to develop Fortnite, but on the other hand, you're just driving users back to Fortnite with these different creative appetizers. Is this is this?
I think that's a fair way to think about it theoretically, but in reality, if you look at the actual usage of first party versus third party experiences on UEFN, which including Battle Royale for Fortnite, it is fair. It oscillates between 60-40 to 40-60, and a lot of that has to do with the seasonality of the game. When a new season drops, new content drops, players really come in for that first party content. And then you see a migration of usage towards the third-party content. So it does really act like a funnel that way. But you're right. Like any advertising that we do has to drive players to Fortnite, And so whether you call it Fortnite a platform or Fortnite a game, either way, they're on Epic's homepage. Yeah. That's just part of the funnel.
Yeah, that was a really brave thing they did. Last year, very early into the life cycle of UEFN, they basically changed the entire homepage of Fortnite to not just be, because the friction when it first came out wasn't great. There's the play button on the far right, and you would select an island from underneath that, from a page over to the right, and then hit play, because you have to go over here and select an island, then come back. And then within a very short space of time, they put the entire sort of creative community right on the landing homepage of Fortnite, which I thought was a really brave thing to do. And that paid off. So I think it's really about how, do you believe in Epic? Are they taking this very seriously, right, from a business point of view? I would say 100% yes. Obviously, got to ask those questions fairly directly last year. If you're going to commit you and your team's lifestyle and livelihoods to this, asked some fairly direct questions of the Epic team last year, and they've been very helpful. We're believers, especially as things get more sophisticated, more interesting, as the audience gets more sophisticated. And a really interesting point they told me recently, which kind of made me laugh, but it's not really surprising, is they used to have a fair amount of interest from brands that wanted to be associated with Fortnite, and maybe, some, joking aside again, the metaverse. But when Facebook changed their name to Meta, their brand interest went from 2 a week to 200 a week. So it's like, we joke about the metaverse as game makers, but, it's real in terms of where people want to be or where they understand and know the audiences, whether that's Roblox or UEFN. So the interest levels in just meta generally as a company, the metaverse and everyone associated with it, just really sort of picked things up, which I was quite surprised by. It just brought brands and people interested in that they'd never been interested before. So just that one moment sort of changed everything, really.
I'll tell you that I think the most telling thing that they've said about their commitment to this platform was it didn't really get picked up so much at GDC, but they basically announced that they're going to start building Fortnite seasons in UEFN, which is it's a seismic shift for the platform. It's as much as like changing the homepage to being everything instead of just Fortnite. It's basically saying this is no longer Fortnite with some third-party content. It's saying this is now a platform, and Fortnite is our first-party game, which we'll be releasing on this platform alongside everybody else. And it's I think that's a great sign of their commitment for this long term.
Yeah, it's funny because we joked about UEFN and the acronym, and I got it wrong on a couple of occasions early on a podcast. Kind of embarrassing. But actually, it's not easy to say either when you put two vowels like that together. But it is really a set of development tools, because actually to the audience, it is just Fortnite. Like to Alex's point, that landing page, that homepage, it's Fortnite. You go there to Fortnite, and I got to play, this game and this game and that game, and then I jumped into Battle Royale. That's very true, but that time spent is quite healthy. If for example, time spent on islands and creators' content was like 5%. I think we'd be like, oh god, this isn't going well. But like to Alex's point, 50-50, 60-40, it's pretty good. And then a whole breadth of old players came back when they released OG last year, and that brought in another flare of interest for people who probably didn't recognize the changes in Fortnite and what is all this new content. So saw some pretty interesting uptick from that as well, because players who'd lapsed somewhat came back and discovered all the islands for the first time.
So it seems like you're fully on board. You're still convinced in the.
We might be
in the growth. Yeah, you might be, depending on how well this goes. But you're very much convinced in the success of the platform and the growth of the platform, and it seems like it's in very early stages when you're talking about it. Like some of the super basic things are missing that are limiting your capabilities to really operate the games. Like launching is easy, but operating and scaling is quite challenging. Perhaps like the sort of a takeaways that would be interesting for the audience is like, what are the lessons you've learned from launching these several titles that you're taking into the next one? And yeah, like what should the listeners know before they start developing for UEFN, so that they don't have to learn the hard way and kind of learn from the mistakes or trials that you've had? Maybe starting with Alex.
Well, I mean, I think there are a few basic things like, just embrace the constraints and design with the tools that you have. There's some slightly deeper, but not super deep things like, hey, it's a little bit more complex than just getting a lot of people to play your island. They do need to stick around. So I think Pete, you said this already, but it's like average play time, on an island is as important as how many people you have playing with it. It's kind of simple arithmetic, but the more minutes you generate at the end of the day, the healthier it is for your game as a business. So that has big implications to how you design, and the winning designs really are things that kind of come out of the community. They don't come from somewhere else in gaming, and I think that's true to every platform. It's like you build for how people live on a platform, and we learned that when we got to mobile. The play patterns there and the kinds of activities that people like to do are just very different than you would do on a PC or a console, and it's same here, and that you kind of have to learn by doing. I've told many people, do a couple of islands and learn from it, before you expect to make something that's really going to work. And the good news is you can do that in a month.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, I've never, in the 40 years apparently that I've been making videos.
The 40.
Was it 50? Maybe
Never.
50.
You're getting there.
You're Gandalf. You're Gandalf, bro.
I don't think I've ever worked in such a speedy, iterative, fun way with brilliant people at that speed before. But it's just every day you make it better, and it's fairly straightforward work other than trying to hit AAA standards of artwork and quality and so on, and a great quality. There's things we still have to surprise and delight people whenever we're learning from the community. So that's certainly a huge positive, is the fun you have and the speed at which you can, win and fail. It's awesome. I just re-emphasize what Alex said, just celebrate what Fortnite is today. Don't come into this if you're going to be like a curmudgeonly AAA developer about it, and fold your arms and complain about scripting languages and so on and the things that it can't do, because that I don't think it's going to set you up culturally to be successful. And also as part of that, leave any ego at the door, because this community votes with its feet. Right? They don't care who you are or how successful you be.
Exactly.
What games really shit. So they vote with their eyeballs and their feet in your islands if you make great content. So you got to leave your ego at the door. One example is, one of our engineers built Capture the Flag, and one of the other artists said, "Well, why are we doing Capture the Flag? It's so boring." And I was like, "Well, if you're 13 years old, right, playing Capture the Flag inside Fortnite might be the first time you've ever experienced that, and it's going to be magical. So you got to just re-engineer, rethink, and 180 a few things. Because if you come in with sort of old school sort of structures and thoughts and processes about how to do things, you could come unstuck very quickly, I think. So leave your ego at the door, engage in the community, learn from them more than anyone, and have a ton of fun iterating, building. But go back to one of my earlier points, have a runway, because it's not easy. Yeah.
I think like any new platform, people get attracted as like, here's a place to get super successful, super quick. And, it's not really that. It is absolutely an amazing place to build things quickly. But if you're looking to make an impactful business, it's an investment. I think the long-term potential is crazy. I mean, just think like they're not even on mobile. Like like when they come back to mobile, it's going to double the number of people on the platform. It's just bonkers to think about.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, because I've been hearing a lot of negative things, and maybe the negative things about the platform are the ones that come to the surface the fastest. And I've been hearing about some of the studios kind of trying it out, doing a few games, and really pivoting out, saying no, this is not sustainable, and so forth. So I'm really glad to hear that both of you are not only have developed for the platform, developing in the future, and pretty excited about the future of the platform, rather than thinking about like what next. We tried this out, and so this is great to hear.
Yeah, I mean, just think about what's happening in the game industry. If you looked at Newzoo's latest report, it's like 60% of 60% of playtime is in 7-year-old games.
Yeah, everybody plays.
Yeah, and actually,
existing
really
franchises.
terrifying. Yeah, and like, did you see the number of PlayStation games being bought by people over 50? I was like, oh, that's scary. That's a little. It's not weird or scary, but it as a metric on the other side of the spectrum, right? You got Roblox at 77 million DAU saying that, oh yeah, 75% of 9 to 14-year-olds in America are on Roblox, and you just, oh my god, when that audience migrates through the improvements in Roblox or moves across Fortnite, I don't think they're going to want to give you $60 for your console game in 3 or 4 years from now. It's happening already, but that's why it is the older franchises, the big franchises. That's where the money is. That's where the people are. That's where, unfortunately, people have been doubling down recently and seen so many layoffs. It's because it is, in the end, whether it's Epic's, math or not, all of this is about time spent. When Netflix did their market report, their number one competitor was Roblox. It's time spent, and that's what people are fighting for. And these communities, these viewers, these players, they vote with their feet. So you got to make great content because it's really easy to just skip on to the next island.
Slow friction, easy come, easy go.
Yeah. I'm really fascinated by these new platforms also because just like with Facebook games and with mobile games as well, like the design that worked on the previous platform will not work on the next platform. And we always kind of think from that perspective, like, oh, I know free-to-play games from mobile. I'm just going to come into UEFN or Roblox and just dominate because these fools don't know what I know. But that same thinking was applied by console developers who came in on Facebook games and they came onto mobile games. Like, time to get some real games on this platform, guys. Like move over. The real game makers are here. Yeah. So I'm very fascinated. I did. And I feel now I'm in the place where I, understand what makes good mobile, and then I, look at these new platforms, and what I consider good won't even work here. And you guys have gone through so many revolutions, so it's marvelous to see. You're pushing here.
Well, like Alex said, he's making a new playbook. You sort of have to, because some people have a playbook from 20 years ago, right? And they just carry this playbook around with them everywhere they go, right?
Exactly.
You should throw that out the window.
Leave it with your ego at the door, put it in the bin because it's not going to translate frequently, at least. And sometimes it does, like games like Capture the Flag. It's a discovery channel on UEFN because no one's ever played it, particularly on that platform. So there's some good and bad.
Yeah. And because monetization is through engagement, I totally understand why things like concerts or elements that bring people together to hang out are so popular, because actually that increases your concurrent users. You can make them into events. You can tap into community that comes in to enjoy those together, and it monetizes the best because you have concurrent users in that place. So very interesting what these games will be, and how they're most likely not going to be kind of like the extensions of the original Fortnite, but something totally new and unexpected.
Yeah, I mean, I had to go to Gary's mod and look at what Skibidi Toilet was when it was number one game on YouTube. And my son was like, "I'll show you Skibidi Toilet." I was like, "Okay." You just see wild, interesting memes and things that most people aren't connected with this audiences, and they surface on these platforms very, very quickly. So it's pretty, and those memes translate across from, if you look at the success of Bed Wars on UEFN, that originated on Roblox, and you see a little bit of that back and forth as well in the community side. Some of these ideas from Roblox are actually sticking on UEFN, almost direct copies. So, and Red versus Blue, which is just like older than time itself at this point.
Awesome. Well, anything you guys anything I did not ask and you want to mention, or anything you want to tell to the community, floor is yours.
I would honestly just say that if anyone's interested, just reach out through LinkedIn or otherwise. It is a very communal place to build. There's lots of sharing and lots of openness because everyone's trying to learn and help each other, whether it be the data or the successes or the failures and the whys, and there's tons of that. So I found it to be a really positive, open place to hang out. So if people have questions, I'm always happy to jump on calls and help, because it is fraught with some risk, but in the end, the long-term strategy, the long-term view, we're super excited about it. So yeah, just openness and good questions, always happy to answer them.
Right on. Likewise. I mean, we are also publishing games too, so always interested to hear from creators or other people building in this space. The health of this ecosystem benefits everybody who's in it. So always love having conversations about what folks are doing. And I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I'm on Twitter, all over the place. You know where to find me.
Yeah. Oh, and the Fourth Curtain, of course, on the podcast as well.
That's right. If you want to spend an hour, if you haven't had enough of me, and you want another hour, go check out the Fourth Curtain.
For everybody who listened till the end, I mean, this is an open invitation to connect with Pete and Alex. That's pretty unique. So do so. Discuss UEFN, a new frontier in the development, a platform on the rise, and these gentlemen are happy and eager, developing developing their games and developing the platform. So super excited to see how the games will look like in a couple of years, where all the youngsters start making more of these titles and kind of bringing their crazy ideas into
younger generation, a more
fruition.
diverse and global generation of game makers. It's going to be fascinating and I think really healthy for the video.
Yeah, well, you like 77 million DAU robots gets its hands on Copilot tools and AI. Whew.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's why I'm pretty glad I'm, maybe a decade from retiring, because like it's gonna be really something the next few years. That's for sure.
Well, on that note, thank you, Pete. Thank you, Alex, for really opening up on UEFN. I think this was a very interesting conversation. A lot of insights for anybody considering to develop, and for those who want to bring their old playbook, don't do it on UEFN. Go to a similar studio that you're working in right now. On that note, thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Yeah, there's still plenty of studios that take old playbooks.
Thanks for having us.